over church-state separation is fundamentally is a debate over the meaning and of the contents in the Constitution. I mean, the difference is in the meaning itself.
Well, one of the things that you find that is quite laughable when you look at it from an historical standpoint is the claim that, well, most of the founders were Christians, which is probably true. Probably most of them were Episcopalians like me. And that therefore, since they were Christians, that gave Christians the right to have their forms of worship getting some degree of recognition in government activities. Well, that just was never the thought when it came to government activities being controlled in any way by one religious view over another religious view. It was thought that religion is something that is delegated to the churches as their sphere of influence and authority, and government authority, while moral in nature, still had to be free of any view of denominationalism.
Well, the thing is, when I read the First Amendment, automatically I thought that it does have, I mean, it depends on the reader sometimes. It does have two different perspectives. One is that it gives power to the government. Then the second interpretation, it does not give any power to the government.
Yeah. Whenever you come out with a statement, Congress shall make no law,
right,
that is a complete prohibition of governmental power. You cannot find any place in the Constitution that's more absolute than that phrase. Congress shall have no power to abridge. And consequently, you have to take it from that standpoint. It's a fairly strong statement that government is to keep your hands off and to be neutral, not to use the big power of government to influence this way or that way. Let me give you a good example of where government and religion got together to the detriment of religion. Back during what most people, at least most people who are persuaded my political views, saw as a move in the right direction of working to get rid of racism and working to get rid of poverty, we had what's known in the 60s as the Community Action Program. And all through the South, there were efforts made to advance civil rights and civil liberties among poor people, among black people. And one of the things that President Johnson did, he established Community Action Program offices in local churches in small towns. They were usually black churches, and for $50 a month, the rent was reasonable, and they set up office. Well, here comes Martin Luther King Jr., who, after a few years of working very closely with the Johnson administration on civil rights issues, says, well, the war in Vietnam is not a good idea. Immediately, the power of government starts putting pressure on those churches to try to get Martin Luther King Jr. to be quiet on the war. Otherwise, they're going to take those monthly rentals away from the church. Right. And consequently, you always will hurt the power and authority of the church if you leave it dependent in any way on government.
I'm going to read, by the way, two clauses from the Constitution of the United States of America, and I would like to get your own opinion and also your own interpretation of this. Listen to this. Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment or of religion. Second, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, to me, it's very clear. It's more like negative. I mean, it describes that the government cannot do anything when it comes to religion.
Right. Those are two separate clauses, and they're given shorthand names. The first clause is known as the Establishment Clause, and it's a prohibition against establishing any religion. And the second is the free exercise, and it says, again, it's a prohibition of government power interfering with any exercise of religion.
But the Constitution itself does not grant any power, whether it's negative or positive. Isn't that right?
Well, it limits government. It doesn't grant any power to the people because It is constitutionally established that the power exists with the people to begin with.
So why we have all these different interpretations of the same clause?
Well, part of it is because there are people who just refuse to understand. You know, if you start out with a completely neutral view and you keep your mind open, then you see that the very language by itself articulates only one conclusion, that the government is neutral where religion is concerned. But people don't start out that way. They start out as they're Baptists, or they're Roman Catholics, or they're Episcopalians, or they're Muslims, or they're Jews.
So it's politically. I mean, it's politics.
Sure,
you know,
everybody.
If you're a Republican, you think this way. If you're a Democrat, you think this way. If you're a Muslim, for sure, Christian or a Jew, you're going to think. You know, it depends on your ethnics sometimes.
Sometimes
your beliefs.
And certainly, both political parties have in the past, both of the major political parties have in the past made pitches to large groups of people which appeal more to their irrational and cultural point of views. Not that all cultural point of views are irrational, but some are.
Okay. Jim, what led to the separation? I mean, it's got to be something has happened.
But of course, what led to the separation is that people left Europe to get away from things like the 30 Years' War, like the killing of Mennonites, or they were called Anabaptists, like the slaughter of Roman Catholics from Protestants, like Protestants being attacked by Roman Catholics.
But I mean, were both state, church and state, were they bond first in the beginning?
Absolutely.
So they were bond.
That in fact, just take the history of England.
Okay.
When it had always been, like most of Europe, a Roman Catholic country. Then Henry VIII wanted to divorce his first wife. The Pope didn't approve of it because the Pope wanted to get along with the King of Spain, and unfortunately, Henry VIII was married to, I believe it was the sister of the King of Spain. So the Pope was in a kind of a tight squeeze, you might say. In any event, he wouldn't approve of it.
Well, they could have annulled the marriage, and that was it.
Well, that's under rules today. Those rules didn't get here overnight. Back then, the church said no. So Henry left the church, and he was a very strong churchman. But he left the church, established what has now in the United States become the Episcopal Church, which is, I consider myself a Catholic. I say the same Mass that Roman Catholics do, but I'm an English Catholic.
But as a Catholic,